A few years ago, hesitation cost you the house. You blinked, it was gone. You asked for repairs, you lost. You tried to negotiate, and someone else waived everything and took it over asking. But that market is gone. Today, the average home in Jacksonville is sitting closer to almost 3 months than 3 days. Roughly one out of every 5 listings has already cut its price. Inventory is higher than it was this time last year. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The power dynamic has flipped. Not dramatically, not violently, but enough to matter. Prices are not only down about 4% year over year. That's not a crash headline. That's not a panic moment. But leverage? The leverage has moved. Buyers are not desperate anymore. They're selective. They're slower. They're willing to walk. Sellers are not commanding the room anymore. They're adjusting, cutting, and having to compete. And the most dangerous position you can be in right now is thinking that this is still 2022. Because if you're using an urgency strategy in a leverage market, you're going to overpay. And if you're using ego pricing in a cooling market, your house is gonna sit. This isn't a meltdown, it's a turning point. And turning points push people who misread them. Let's break down exactly what has changed. I remember walking a client through a house during one of those peak frenzy seasons. We barely stepped inside before the listing agent texted, "Write a clean offer, no inspection, you've got about 10 minutes. That wasn't a negotiation, that was survival. And if you hesitated, you didn't get the house. But now, same city, same neighborhoods, completely different energy. No one sent out a memo. The news didn't run a banner that said market reset. But the shift showed up where it always does first, in behavior. Deadlines stopped feeling urgent. Buyers started asking for credits again. Listings stopped disappearing within 48 hours. And the line we crossed wasn't an emotional one, it was a mathematical one. Days on market. Once homes started sitting long enough for people to breathe, the leverage changed. It didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen dramatically. It was just enough to actually matter. Because when a house sits, buyers think. And when buyers think, they negotiate. And when negotiation comes back, strategy matters again. That's the line most people didn't realize we crossed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's talk about what these numbers actually show. The invisible line wasn't price. It wasn't interest rates. It wasn't some dramatic headline. It was time. Specifically, how long homes are sitting before they go under contract. For the last few years, Jacksonville lived in a compressed timeline. If a listing made it to the weekend, that felt slow. Buyers weren't negotiating, they were auditioning. If you hesitated, you lost. Now the average home is taking closer to almost 3 months to go under contract. And that number is the difference between competing and choosing. Because when everything moves fast, sellers get comfortable, buyers get emotional, and decisions get rushed. But once listings start lingering past 30 days, maybe past 45 days, and now stretching well beyond that in some areas, something changes. You see it when the same house in Riverside is still there the following weekend. You feel it in San Marco when buyers schedule a second showing instead of writing an offer in the driveway. You hear it in Mandarin and Southside conversations where credits are back in play and best and final, well, those aren't automatic anymore. Because when buyers stop reacting and start deciding, everything shifts. Sellers stop assuming last year's rules apply, negotiations come back, time comes back, and in certain pockets, advantage quietly tilts. And when homes sit long enough for people to breathe, they start comparing, they start negotiating, and they start thinking. Here's where a lot of people get this wrong. They hear market shift and immediately think discounts, fire sales, slashed prices. That's not what happened here. Prices didn't fall off a cliff. Sellers didn't suddenly get desperate. What buyers got back wasn't massive price cuts. What they got back was control. And that's more powerful than a headline discount. Control means time. It means you're not writing offers from the driveway because you're afraid it'll be gone by dinner. It means you can walk a property twice. It means you can drive the street at night. You can actually look at the roof and ask about insurance before committing. It means inspection requests aren't automatic deal killers anymore. It means seller pay closing costs and rate buy-down conversations are back on the table in situations where they weren't even entertained a year or two ago. And this isn't theoretical. You can feel it across the city. In Bay Meadows, listings that would have vanished in a weekend are sitting long enough for buyers to compare them. In parts of the south side, negotiation isn't a dirty word anymore. Out toward Mandarin, credits and repair requests are sticking where they would have been laughed at 2 years ago. Inventory is higher than it was this time last year, and price adjustments are no longer rare events. They're a normal strategy. That means buyers aren't boxed into this one or nothing. They have options, and options can create discipline. Here's the shift nobody headlines. Buyers didn't just get negotiating room, they got their confidence back. They're not scared of losing a house anymore. They're scared of making a bad decision. That's a healthier fear. That leads to cleaner contracts, fewer emotional offers, and smarter long-term moves. Now that doesn't mean every buyer wins. Control only helps if you know how to use it. Some buyers will stall, some will overthink, some hesitate too long, and then they miss good opportunities because they assume every seller will bend, and that's not how it works. This isn't a discount market, it's a control market. And once buyers understand that difference, their entire approach changes. Here's the interesting part. The headlines didn't miss the shift because they were wrong. They missed it because they were looking at the wrong layer. Most national reporting focuses on big picture data like median prices, year-over-year comparisons, and mortgage rate forecasts. And on paper, Jacksonville doesn't look dramatic. Prices are only modestly down from their peaks. Sales are still happening in the sky, it didn't fall. So the story becomes a balanced market. But markets don't change in headlines first. What changes first is the behavior. The turning point showed up in showings before it ever showed up in charts. It showed up in how quickly a listing agent would return a buyer's agent's phone calls. It showed up in whether sellers pushed back on inspection requests or accepted them quietly. It showed up whether buyers escalated or hit the pause button. Those are not national data points. Those are contract level signals. And Jacksonville has always moved differently than the broader narrative suggests. It doesn't spike as violently as some markets, and it doesn't crash as loudly either. It shifts gradually. That makes it harder to spot unless you're in it every single week. The turning point wasn't a collapse. It was a quiet recalibration, and quiet recalibrations do not trend. If you want to pinpoint the moment this market turned, it wasn't one single stat. It was when multiple signals started moving in the same direction and at the same time. Redfin and Zillow both began showing longer sale timelines in Jacksonville. Homes were no longer compressing into 48-hour bidding cycles. That shift alone didn't mean much in isolation. But when time stretches, behavior changes, and when behavior changes, pricing eventually follows. At the same time, Zillow's average home value index showed Jacksonville down roughly 4% year over year. That's definitely not a crash, and it's not a collapse, but enough to confirm that the ceiling had been hit. The appreciation curve flattened. That matters because markets rarely go from vertical growth straight into free fall. They plateau first, and plateaus is where the leverage redistributes. The National Association of Realtors included Jacksonville on its top 10 home buying spots for 2026. At the same time, they projected existing home sales nationally rising around 14%, with mortgage rates potentially trending the low 6% range. The forecast is national, not Jacksonville specific, but it does create context. Because when you combine modest price softening, longer timelines, normalized pricing adjustments, improving affordability conditions, plenty of sellers adjusted their expectations. Too many of them, though, never adjusted their mindset. That's the expensive mistake showing up across the Jacksonville metro area right now. Sellers are still using a few years ago logic in a market that already moved on. Same pricing posture, same we'll just wait for the right buyer confidence, same assumption that demand will stretch to meet them, but it doesn't. Time behaves differently now. In a recalibrating market, the first 2 weeks matter more than the next 60. When a listing launches too high and sits without an adjustment, buyers don't interpret this as patience. They interpret it as misalignment. Curiosity fades, doubt creeps in, and once momentum slips, it's extremely hard to get it back. Price reductions are no longer rare events. They're part of the landscape. Homes that adjust early tend to sell cleaner, with fewer concessions and fewer fall-throughs. Homes that cling to peak pricing don't protect value, they chase the market downward after weeks of stagnation. That's happening underneath all of this is psychological. Buyers are no longer afraid of losing a home. Sellers, meanwhile, are afraid of leaving money on the table. That fear creates hesitation, and hesitation in a control market drains leverage faster than a price cut ever would. Jacksonville is not moving as one single market. Some areas are still tight and competitive, while others are quietly opening doors. And knowing which is which changes everything. If you're planning a move to Jacksonville right now, this turning point changes the entire experience, not just financially, but also emotionally. Relocating here used to feel like trying to learn a new city while sprinting. Homes were moving fast. Decisions were made before you understood commute patterns, flood zones, insurance realities, or even how far you really are from the beach when Google Maps says 20 minutes. But that pressure is gone, and that does matter. Because moving to Jacksonville is not just about square footage, it's about rhythm. It's about which side of the river you're on. It's about whether your daily drive crosses a bottleneck at the wrong time. It's about whether you're 5 minutes from Publix or 25 minutes from almost anything. This market gives you room to test those things. You can tour a house, leave, run insurance quotes, check flood maps, and actually compare neighborhoods without assuming the property will disappear by morning. You can drive San Jose Boulevard at 8 a.m. instead of just noon. You can sit in Riverside on a Saturday and feel the pace instead of rushing through a showing with 3 other buyers waiting outside. The breathing room changes everything. This market shift rewards people who prioritize fit over frenzy. If you use this moment well, you don't just buy a house, but you buy alignment. Alignment with commute, insurance costs, lifestyle, traffic flow, and long-term comfort. 6 months ago, hesitation cost you the house. But today, hesitation costs you something a little different. It costs you clarity. Because this market is no longer about who moves fast, it's about who reads it correctly. Some people will misread this shift and assume discounts are everywhere. They'll overplay their leverage. They'll stall too long and miss good opportunities because they think every seller is willing to fold. Others will misread it the opposite way. They'll assume nothing changed, price too aggressively, cling to outdated expectations, and watch as the momentum disappears. Both mistakes come from using old rules in a new environment. The turning point is not dramatic. Again, it's strategic. It rewards preparation over panic, alignment over ego, patience over impulse. And in Jacksonville especially, that matters. Because the city does not move as one clean line. It moves in pockets, in corridors, in price bands. Some areas are steady, some are softening. Some are holding firm because the demand there is structural, not emotional. If you understand that, you can move confidently. If you don't, well, then you're guessing. The people who win in this market are not the fastest, they're not the loudest, they're not the ones chasing headlines. They're the ones who match strategy to timing and timing to neighborhood. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or relocating to Jacksonville, this is the kind of moment where having a real local insight makes the difference between a smooth move and, again, an expensive lesson. My name is Andrew Michael, and this is what my team and I help people navigate every single day. If you want clarity on your specific situation, reach out. You can call, text, email. We'll walk you through that shift actually means for you, not just the market in general. And if you want to go deeper, I've got another video breaking down the biggest mistakes people are making when moving to Jacksonville and how to avoid them. If you're serious about getting this straight, that's the one you should watch. I'll see you there.